Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you're able to see me and your screen. If you're not, you're looking at our ready to go first slide. But I wanted just to start today by thanking everyone for coming. This is the first series that we have for Ready to Go, where we're going to be exploring the intersection of equity and the ecosystem of educational technology. When we first started this series, we imagined that it would be for people. This Ready to Go series was about 2 years ago, and we were thinking about people who wanted to know more about the field of educational technology, and specifically from an educational leadership perspective, or maybe an administrator's perspective, or even an aspiring administrator's perspective. But what we found out was that these were topics that a lot of people wanted to learn more about. So we have kind of opened it up to a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, and we're just thrilled to have you. We know that your time is something that's precious pretty much around this time of night too. So again, just thank you for coming and joining us while we explore these topics. Let me start off today just to take a minute to recognize my team. And while I do that, could you please just say hello in the chat to us and let us know your district or organization? I want to introduce my director, Alicia Gallegos Butters. And then specifically, I wanted to introduce Chris Garcia. Today is his first day joining our team. He's coming to us from Cajon Valley. Is that right, Chris?
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And then for the rest of my team who's here, I'm going to let you, according to the picture here, go ahead and unmute and just say hello if you're here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie, and I'm excited to train with you today.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Sierra. I'm a resource teacher on the EdTech team.
Okay. So our objectives today during this time are going to be to reflect on the current state of technology use. So we kind of want to take a look. We're now, post-pandemic, and there have been so many changes in how teachers look at technology, how we use technology, and even within the realm of students' use of technology at home. So with that, we're also going to explore the concept of digital equity and begin talking a little bit, providing some resources to help you get a deeper understanding of it, and just that knowing more about what it is and what we're looking at when we talk about equity and access to technology. At the very end, I'm going to leave about 15 minutes open. So if we hit right at 5 o'clock and you want to talk some more, I'll hold our sessions open a little bit longer for an open discussion. If you're not wanting to participate in an open discussion, I know a lot of people come in and they check in and they're either driving home or they're cooking dinner, or they're wanting to be here to listen. That I'll leave that up to you whether you stay or not. It looks like we have a lot of people today. So what I'd like to do, if you have a cell phone and you can take it out, you can also do this on another tab on your computer. To join our poll everywhere on the screen, how to connect. Yeah, join by. There's a poll everywhere. You can go to pollev.com/praven565, and it will allow you to interact with this poll. Tap on your screen somewhere or click on your screen and let us know what region you work in or what region you identify your work with. If you are kind of working in all of the regions, go ahead and you can tap on all of them, or you can tap out in the ocean kind of over by off of Cardiff or something like that, just to say, hey, I work in all of these areas, because that's pretty much what I would have to do. So I'm starting to see we have some people from San Diego Unified, it looks like, or who work in San Diego. I'll give you a chance to get connected to that. So in looking at our chat, give about 1 more minute for people to connect with that if you'd like to. Once you've connected with that, there are a few other questions that I'll ask today, so you don't have to continue to log out and log back in. Just leave that open and it will change as we ask the new questions. So I do have someone who works in all of the different areas of San Diego. Okay, so keep that screen open. Thank you for showing us who we have in the room today. Keep that screen open, and I am asking the question, just what brings you here today? What you'll notice is I'm forcing you to, I didn't put in all of the above in there, because I kind of wanted to know, are you here for just an interest in ed tech? in equity, in leadership, kind of what would be your top choice? And if you really can't choose between those and you want to say none of the above and put it in the chat, you're welcome to put all of the above in there. But I thought maybe I'd get some interested, like an ability to see, is it equity that's bringing you here today? Is it that you're wanting to improve your knowledge of ed tech, or just leadership in general? So it looks like we have a lot of people here interested in ed tech, definitely interested in that concept of equity that will be, I hate to say, narrowly focused in the ed tech realm because there is so much intersection and overlap. Am I getting anything in the chat that I need to recognize there?
No.
Okay, well, those are filling
a
in.
couple of equities and educational technology, but equity and leadership are also
Thank you.
important.
Yes, awesome. Okay, so I am going to let, thank you for putting those in there. It's good to know who's here and what you're interested in today. I'm going to click on the next slide here, and Carrie is going to take the next 3 slides for you.
So one thing that got us really interested in presenting and exploring more about educational technology and the intersection with equity is SDCOE's North Star. And our North Star came from an outcome of research and collaboration that our SDCOE team did with the San Diego community, San Diego families, and students. And coming up with this, we synthesized the needs of those bodies, and we recognized that currently 50% of San Diego County students qualify for free or reduced lunch. We've now set a goal that we will reduce that number from 51 to 35% by the year 2029, 2030. And the reason we want to do this is so that we can help create a more inclusive future without boundaries for all students, and also to really look at the implications and address the income inequity and inequality within our region.
Okay, would you like me to change the slide?
Sure.
Thank you.
And a lot of what our North Star is based on is our equity blueprint for action, which is linked right here. And this equity blueprint for action came through advisory committees that SDCOE held with the most marginalized groups within the San Diego County community. The goal was to amplify voices, to understand experiences, and to recognize the knowledge of the different communities that exist within San Diego. And what emerged was the need for assets-based systems, culturally and linguistically responsive instruction, family and community voice, and student agency and voice. And so our ed tech team is really interested in how we can utilize the equity blueprint and address the North Star through educational technology and its blend and intersectionality with equity. Next slide, please.
Perfect.
And today, as Pam mentioned, we'll be talking a lot about digital equity. And digital equity is pivotal if we are hoping to create equity throughout San Diego community, to reduce income inequality, and to achieve our North Star at SDCOE. And so part of digital equity, and this is what we're going to talk about quite a bit today, is making sure that learners of all backgrounds and identities can fully participate in society, education, and the workforce. And as we do this, they can build connections to one another, lead meaningful lives, and hopefully we'll be able to reach our North Star at SDCOE.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, and so I just wanted to add a little bit to that of where we came to build out this series as well was in our own exploration of taking a look at what our practices are in ed tech. And we're just kind of like, we've been doing some equity work now for about 2 years with National Equity Project, with our equity department here at the county. And we've really turned an internal lens into our own department, and we're starting to think of our own programs and how might we shift things and how might we think about the different, what I call ecosystem of ed tech. So there's a pretty consistent pattern when districts adopt technology. And what we find is the first thing that everyone's very focused on is whether or not people have access to computers. So with the pandemic, before the pandemic, there were a lot of school districts that maybe had computers in their classrooms, but they were moved around on carts. So when you might share a cart of computers with 3 other classrooms. There might be districts that had a full one-to-one program. I came from San Diego Unified, and there was definitely a one computer for one student. Oftentimes the carts were left at school, and there were very few programs where students were taking them home. Some districts didn't have computers. Some districts would do bring your own devices. So we saw a lot of variation from school to school to school. And I'm just curious right now, if you wanted to pop into the chat, whether or not pre-pandemic your districts had access to one-to-one technology. So if you want to say yes for that, we'll know, hey, you had them, and when the pandemic hit, just getting them home might have been your big concern at that time. And then if you say no, we'll know that maybe you had some, but not a one-to-one program. So I'm seeing a couple of people saying yes. SUHSD had them. San Diego Unified, Oceanside. Yes, a lot of people are saying they have them in the cart, varied by school sites. And that's a lot of what we found. And that's a lot of what the conversation around equity definitely was about, was just getting students to have that technology. And once we got into the pandemic, you'll see that became getting devices into the hands of students and getting them home so that they could use them. And once, from our perspective in the county, we knew we were working with some districts where every student who was at home had a district, the district gave them a computer, and each student in the household would have a computer. Some districts were sending one home per family. Some districts didn't have at the immediate one-to-one or ability to send them home, and we're in the process of doing that through the pandemic. So again, we saw a lot of variation on that first concept of just having that access. The next level that we think about, though, is now you have the computers. You have to have access to some kind of reliable, and I'm going to put in here high-speed internet. So a lot of times we'll hear from districts and they'll say that their students have access to the internet, but that could be because they have cell phone access, or they can use a hotspot on their cell phone. Or maybe they have a slower, like a 2G internet capability. And a lot of times that's not what they'll need for streaming. So that's kind of the second part, is the access to computers. And then how do you connect those computers to the internet? That becomes the next challenge. And sometimes schools were working on that concurrently. And then we have access to technical support and skills. So if you've got the technology, you can get it online. You have to be able to use it, to know how to use it, and to know or have support when it isn't working correctly. I know any teacher in here who has used technology in their classroom knows that you've had that moment. We've certainly had it here where the internet doesn't work, or the computer isn't plugged in and suddenly goes out, or any manner of things that can get in the way of actually teaching and learning on that device. And the same thing happens when we send them home to students. Okay. And then the last thing, and I think it's really important to put on here, is that students need to have access to trained and educators. Educators need to know what to do with the technology to make it an instructional tool. That's where we dig into pedagogy, and that's where, that craft of being a teacher comes in, and giving students something to do with the technology once it's being sent home. So this series that we're looking at, I wanted to kind of point out that today's discussion is a lot about that idea of digital equity. Looks at those first 3 areas: the access to the computer, the access to reliable internet, and then do you have the support and the skills to use that? And then the last of the 4 different sessions that we'll have as we go through this year kind of dig more into the actual use of the technology and the equity issues that come into play when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to having, how can you use technology to build and help support the development of students having a strong identity of themselves, and making sure that the curriculum is reflective of who they are. The idea of experiential equity in ed tech is just how are you using the technology to support a variation in learning styles, or in ways that students they're, that is assets based and is helping them based on skills that they already have. And then finally, Carrie and I are going to be, and Carrie, you're my big supporter and help with this. This is her area in terms of accessibility and inclusive technologies. So that kind of is the ecosystem. I am sure as we go through the year, we might find areas as well that need to be looked at and we need to think about. But as we go through the series, we're trying to keep it at the level of what you might need to know if you were a leader wanting to talk about these topics, if you're kind of exploring your own equity work right now. I'm going to say that our department, we do have experts in equity in the County Office of Ed, and we confer with them, and we have been doing work with them, but we don't consider ourselves experts per se in equity. We are experts in ed tech, and we are learning to become better knowledgeable about these equity issues. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So again, if you can go on your cell phone, you can scan the QR code or just put in the URL if you're using a computer. And then tap your screen. Green side is yes, red side's no. And if you're not quite sure, you can place your mark in the middle. But my first question is, do your students currently have access to the technology tools then needed for learning? How do you feel? This is not a scientific poll, but I'm just curious. Do you have access to computers? And do you feel, for the most part, when you're in school, that they have what they need to learn? So I have a few people, most of you are saying yes. Cool. And I see in the chat, some are saying, Pam, thanks, is saying yes. And I know some of you are driving, so please don't tap the screen. It's okay. We're just getting a general idea here. And those are kind of the first questions you're going to ask as you look around classrooms, if you're touring and you're thinking about your own, your district or your school or your classrooms, is what kind of access do I have? Sometimes access is my computer out and available for students throughout the day? Are they in a closet somewhere not being used? So having it doesn't mean always that you're using it. Okay, I'm going to clear the responses. And now my question for you is, if you have that technology at your school sites, so I'm still in school, do they have access to reliable high-speed service, like a high-speed broadband service, to your knowledge, or do your computers stall out? I have certainly been in districts, I've worked in my own district where, sometimes we had internet issues, and that could make it very hard if you're a teacher and you're trying to get all your students on a device, and it's constantly in that spin of death that it will get on occasion. And it certainly means that in some areas where the access is good, students are using it, they're not stopping, it's not becoming a hindrance to them. And in other areas, it might not be. So it looks like, I'm seeing yeses and nos out there. Okay. I'm going to clear them again. And somebody's saying it depends on the weather. Yeah, depending on how your school is connected or where you're located even. And we see that a lot, that location and whether or not broadband is in those locations can be an issue. And then I'm very happy for the people who say yes and the speed is reliable. That is what we're looking to see for everybody. For my next question, for students who have access to both computers and the internet, and let's say this is at home now, can they afford to use them? So if you are a district now sending devices home, and a lot still are post-pandemic, do students know how to use them? Are they using them enough in class that taking them home and using them as an educational tool is not something new to them? And then do they know how to keep them running? Oh, I'm sorry, can they afford them? Can they afford the internet if they have it? So a lot of times we send devices home and we're not quite sure what kind of connectivity they have. So if we're sending devices home too, something to be concerned about is that idea of homework discrepancy. So are there students who have access and then you have students who don't have access? And are you requiring homework to be done at home? Okay. And then my last question for you. Do your students know how to use them for learning? Do you feel confident that in your district or in your school, or just from your own perspective? So again, these are questions from your own perspective. Do you think that students know how to use devices for learning because they're getting enough practice at that, enough exposure, enough experience? Or are they kind of thinking of them more as a toy? So that's good to see. And I have to say, a lot of what we're seeing post-pandemic is that teachers are tending to use those computers more. We see more students being able to have access, certainly more since the pandemic hit. And we'll talk a little bit about factors around that. Yeah, do they know how to use them for learning? Yes. Do they use them for learning? Not always. Yeah. So we always say when you're sending devices home, if you're wanting them to be used for learning, students have to have a reason. They need to know what you're asking them to do, and they need to have that access to be able to do that. Okay. So I have some good news post-pandemic. I thought I would share this video with you quickly, and it's not the whole thing. But let me go ahead and click that on, and I'll turn on the closed captions for it as well. Are you hearing sound? All of a sudden, I'm not hearing sound.
The Denver Youth Empowerment Center,
We can
the
hear the
objective
sound.
is to be a safe zone. Individuals could come here
I
and be
can't.
able to work on their homework, work on other different trainings for other jobs, and be able to obtain jobs, as well as be able to have healing and entrepreneurial opportunities as well.
I think that it's very important for the community because there's so many things going on in the world, and I don't think that parents are always super aware of the things that are going on on the street, or literally just from your kid getting on the bus to go to the gym or to go to the library to study. There's so many things that can happen and so many uncertainties. So I think that places like this where kids can go to a place with tutoring opportunities and with exercise opportunities and so many things that they can learn and do in a safe environment is super important.
So my internet on my house sucks really bad, so I never use my internet because it's better without.
Yeah, it's frustrating because how much times you need to do it over and over, and after you restart your stuff and everything and it still don't work, that gets more frustrating.
If they have their basic needs met, it creates an umbrella of a safety net, knowing that I don't have to just survive anymore. I can start striving within the world. And then the psychological aspect of it, it brings ease where we're not in a flight, fright, or freeze. We're not even in survival mode anymore. We can start striving. And that creates hope, and hope creates motivation, determination to allow us to continue moving forward and being able to sustain the efforts. And that's what Lift Zone really, really allows us to help provide for the community at each individual basis, family basis, and a community basis.
I think connectivity means a lot of things. We live in such a world of opportunity, so there's so many ways that you could be connected or disconnected. So I think connectivity to me would mean just feeling like I'm open to opportunity, like I'm have so many outlets and all that sort of thing.
Connectivity is essential.
Okay. All right. So I want to know, is any thoughts on that video, or anyone who wants to unmute and share their thinking around it? Or you can put your thoughts in the chat and we'll read them.
I think for me, it's just kind of reminding myself that not every kid has what my own children have. At my house, my husband and I both know how to use technology and can support my kids. And we have a great internet connection. And just remembering that not all my students have that. Many of my students go home to parents who have no idea how to help them on the computer and wouldn't be able to troubleshoot some of their tech problems. So it's just a good reminder for me.
Thank you. I believe that someone asked if I knew where the video was located, and I think I'm guessing. I would be guessing. I think I have a feeling like it's somewhere on the East Coast, but I don't know for sure. What I will say is all of the videos are linked in the presentation. So if you wanted to check any of them out later on your own, you're welcome to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. So there's a couple of the three big ideas here are availability, which is that kind of idea. Do you have access to computers? Do you have the sufficient, so accessibility kind of availability covers, do you have the computers and do you have reliable high-speed internet? So we have some statistics for you that there's 15 to 16 million K through 12 learners not having sufficient access to reliable high-speed broadband in the United States. There's 19 million households that struggle to access reliable high-speed broadband, and especially where you have multiple individuals accessing it at the same time. So that was one of the things that the pandemic brought up, was if you have people trying to stream, or if you have a lot of students in one house and everyone is tapping the internet, and this is why we get back to you need that high-speed broadband, it would severely restrict or bring down the speeds that you're finding that students have. So again, if students are struggling to connect, it's going to have a struggle to get any kind of work done. It's going to struggle and be frustrating for them to continue. So the availability of it is something that a lot of people are working on right now. We notice there's some myths out there a little bit that I think if I ask the question, who do you think has less access, urban areas or rural areas? I think a lot of people would think of the rural areas and say, well, they don't have the infrastructure, or so they must be the people who have less access to it. And actually, you can see from this chart, you have 14 million households in urban areas who do not have access to it. You have a lot of people on top of each other living in, might live in an apartment complex, and you have people on top of you, people below you, people tapping. So the internet access sometimes is spread out over a bunch of homes that way, and it can become harder. In rural areas, we have 4 million. So it is still an issue in rural areas that they don't have the infrastructure, but another issue is in urban areas. If you look at the next chart, the percentages of households with no home broadband of any kind increases as you look at total income of the groups. So a lot of times the availability can be there, but affordability is not. And then sometimes the issue is availability. So they work concurrently, and there are things that the California Department of Ed and the federal government Department of Educational Technologies have been working with industries and private sectors to improve. The idea of affordability, again, we find that that ability to have access can be very limited by the costs. 16% of adult learners report sharing their devices with others in the household, and 38% of learners report completing coursework on a smartphone. If your access is limited, your ability to get work done is going to be limited, and a lot of that does come down to affordability, and we see it playing out across households that way as well. Finally, adoption is that kind of idea of, do learners and caregivers, when they're at home, do they have the ability to use the technology? So it's not just, again, the idea that you would not have access or not have the high-speed ability, but what might be stopping students would be how much do they have family support? Do they know where they can go to get help? Are they being taught in school how to use it? So again, 32 million Americans with no digital literacy skills, and that half of that being what they're finding Black and Latinx workers. 15 to 16 million K-12 learners have insufficient broadband, and approximately 6 million face adoption barriers. So that's a lot of students who are still not having access, or access in the sense of actually being able to put their hands on the technology, getting it to work, or being able to use it. Okay, so I'm not going to read the slide too much because I think I just talked a lot about it, but these are the discussion points when we talk about digital equity. It's the availability, affordability, and adoption. Does anybody have any questions? I see Alicia put that in the chat, or things that you would like to talk about at this point. So what is going on in the world of digital equity that's good? I in the research that I've been doing lately, I have seen that, as I said, pre-pandemic, there has definitely been what is called a pandemic bump in terms of access, in terms of students having technology, in terms of students getting that internet access that they need at home and in schools. In terms of the teacher preparedness, though, a lot more teachers are using it. They had to during the pandemic, but we do see that there, in some cases, was an effect where teachers kind of just said, I don't want to do this anymore. Right now, my students need to be connected with one another. They need to be talking. We don't need more screen time. So that sometimes the technology got put away. And in other cases, we see teachers continuing to use it in their classrooms. So I have another video, and I'm assuming I'm not going to be able to hear it, but I'm going to put it on. These are some of the highlights or some good news around technology, I think.
Toward a solution. Until now. Across the country, rural areas are expanding broadband internet access, while cities work to make connecting more affordable for those who have been left behind.
These are problems that have existed for a long time. But what this crisis has done is fast forward us into a broadband future. Crises change society. The opportunity here is to recognize that broadband is absolutely essential.
In the wake of COVID-19 in the US, the internet has become a lifeline for millions of people. But there are many in the country who have to go to great lengths in order to get online at all.
See if we can get this laptop connected to some parking lot Wi-Fi and get some work done. What do you think, Ben? Yeah! All right.
Jeff lives outside of Columbus, Ohio, and is just out of range of service for the major internet providers in the area.
Right here, about 900 feet away, is where the service area stops for our local cable company.
While he's able to get most of his own work done at home by maxing out an expensive cell phone plan, which gets him a single bar of service, it's not enough for his 8-year-old son to log on to his online classroom.
It's not going?
No, it has to reach all the way to the end, to the X.
Oh.
So Jeff and Ben venture out searching for a connection, using an open Wi-Fi tracker, often only to be met with more frustration.
There's a posted no trespassing, keep out sign. I think we're striking out again. There's massive propane tanks in the back, and we're not going to stick around here to find out if there's a Wi-Fi signal or not. This doesn't seem like a good place to conduct class today, so I think we're just going to move on to the next one and see what we can find.
We face a national broadband challenge, but it requires multiple solutions.
This is Jonathan Sallet, a senior fellow at the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society.
This crisis has shown us that we have multiple digital divides and that they threaten to become a digital chasm.
In Ohio, like in much of the US, getting people connected breaks down broadly into 2 buckets. One requires bringing internet access to places it's never been before, and the other is making service more affordable where it already exists. The problems are different, so the solutions are too. In rural areas, solutions often come out of small, local efforts.
Residents on Bent Mountain just got high-speed wireless broadband thanks to one individual.
I was talking to a gentleman in Western Virginia, works in a local business, lives on a mountaintop, and nobody had broadband. So he figured out how to build his own small ISP. Now there's 20 families on a mountaintop in Virginia getting broadband that didn't. We might think, well, that's too small a solution. We need one big solution. But we got to understand these small solutions add up.
Meanwhile, the issue in America's big cities is most often a matter of making internet subscriptions affordable and accessible. In Detroit, a city with one of the sharpest digital divides in the country, many students were left adrift after being required to attend class from home. But in facing this challenge, the community saw an opportunity to launch a response that would lead to permanent connections.
We know that up to 90% of our family did not have either a device and internet connection that would allow them to access the online curriculum. Our children are short of the financial resources needed to educate them.
Pamela Moore leads the Detroit Public Schools Foundation, which in June began sending out 51,000 computer tablets, one for every public school student in the district. The devices come with a 6-month internet plan and technical support.
After 6 months, families will be transitioned to low-cost internet plans that are available in the city of Detroit. If a family says that they cannot afford that plan, Detroit Public Schools Community District is willing to cover that cost. This was always on the long, long list of things to do and things to improve and things to address. But without this crisis, I do not think the call to action would have looked quite the way it looks now.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. I chose this video because I really felt like the access to internet was interesting. Some of the solutions that they came up with. If you know anything about Lemon Link in Lemon Grove, I think it was La Mesa Spring Valley, there was, when internet first came out, they created their own tower. And I think that Lemon Link is still being used for many of the schools and the local fire department and some of the government buildings that they have in Lemon Grove. So that was just one instance of something small that was being done. And then just all of the kinds of things that school districts and similar things were being done here during the pandemic that they described in the Detroit school. Anybody have any questions or anything that they wanted to talk about? Alicia, you had something that we were talking about before about just something else to keep in mind when it comes to accessing technology, which I thought was interesting.
So one thing that we've learned at the county in the past is that our motto is to get technology to any family that wants it. And the want is very important because there's been times that we have surveyed people, and there's people out there that just don't want it. They go off the grid and they live off the grid for a reason. And that's something that was really kind of shocking to me when I started at SDCOE, because I thought, oh, everybody wants it. Has anybody encountered something very similar to that? That not all families want it or will accept it?
Yeah, we've even had a couple families who don't want their kids to be necessarily on computers at school, and they ask, like, can they do this on paper instead? I'm worried about what they're going to see on the internet. I don't want them exposed to that. You know, some super conservative families or whatever their reason is, religious affiliations or whatever, who really, and I'm like, the whole school is doing it, and this is how the whole class is doing this assignment. You know, it's really hard for the teacher to modify for that request.
Absolutely. And we heard a lot of that after COVID. That was huge. People were like, screen time is up too much. And so that's something that we've really had to think about. And how do we give students that same opportunity? Yeah, Kathy.
Hi. We had a family, the grandparents were the guardians and they just wanted nothing to do with it. So our school decided to have a auditorium where similar families who were reluctant to log in, they would drop their kids off and then we could help them with the technology.
I like that. I like that your school did not penalize, but they made accommodations, which is super important. Thank you for sharing. Maureen.
Yeah, one of the things we encountered was it's sort of being on the grid, but immigrant families didn't want to fill out paperwork. That they were very reluctant. And so all the different ways you had to fill out paperwork, whether it's for internet or the one-to-one, they did not want to fill it out and sort of have their name and address out there. So the amount of paperwork was a deterrent.
I can't agree with you more that happens, that parents might think that they're collecting data for another reason or it's going to hurt us. And actually, I think a couple slides from now, I'll speak to how we do something like we help those type of families at the county. Yeah, Melissa.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for providing this series. I think this is, obviously extremely timely and post-pandemic, what we need to be doing as a community. I'm just curious from the county's perspective, what have you found? Obviously, so like one of the first two things, access to computers and reliability. What are the connections you found with those providers, internet providers, and what they're offering? I mean, I know Cox has something with our school district. I'm just kind of scrolling through here and looking at some stuff from the county too, just the campaigns they're provide as far as low cost. But in my opinion, not knowing a lot of it, in my opinion, I feel like that's a short-term band-aid for a bigger problem with the infrastructure, because this, the next 10, 15, 20 years, I mean, it's only going to get more and more, you're going to elevate technology. So how are you going to keep up the infrastructure within cities and internet providers?
And I'll be honest with you, Melissa, we don't have at SDCOE, we don't have a plan to update the infrastructure. I know that our ITS department has conversations about that a lot. And we have looked at very different solutions. There were times back before COVID that because my husband has a big truck that can make it through sand dunes and whatnot, he and I would go out as part of my job at the county to remote areas to see if we could get Wi-Fi out there and report back to the county. There was a time where we were looking at launching satellites in conjunction with some other organizations. Viasat was one of the companies. So in terms of that infrastructure, that's something that I know has been something that the county has been working on with the city and the county, San Diego County. But do they have a solution? No, it's such a big concern. And it's such a big problem. What we do is we partner with most of the major internet providers to offer low-cost internet to families. And that's something that we do. In a couple of slides from now, I'll talk a little bit about that and how that program works.
Anybody else want to speak? Okay. So one of the other things I thought I'd show you, and it kind of goes in line with your question, was, what is happening in the realm of creating better infrastructure. Just recently in 2021, Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So it's the IIJA, or I don't know if people call it EJA, I would, into law. And it's historic in that it is for infrastructure, roads, bridges, things like that. 65 billion to help close the digital, 65 billion, and part of that is to help close the digital divide. So there's not 65 billion going into the digital divide to my knowledge, but and helping to ensure that all Americans, so this is students, adults, elderly, anybody who would need access. It is a thing for all levels of society. But specifically in California, the way that is playing out is we have $41.9 billion allocated to us to increase our infrastructure. I believe it's over the next 5 or 6 years. And from that, 2.14 million is earmarked toward specifically increasing access to broadband for individuals. So there are things in play that were not there before. And like I said, I believe because so many people, and I know in San Diego County Office of Ed, our head of ITS, Terry, I'm blanking on his last name, but Elisa, because I'm trying to think of too many things.
Loftus.
Thank you. Terry Loftus he's done a lot of work in terms of lobbying for and going and being on multidisciplinary teams to talk about this very topic. And so the county, I know, is part of these discussions on how best to connect youth and students and families to the internet and communities. So that's just one area of I think really good news, is that it's catching the attention more. People are seeing the necessity of it. People are seeing that it is part of what you need to thrive and live in this modern society, and approaching almost a basic human right to be able to have open access to this kind of technology and information, and just all of the things people who have it tend to take for granted that make life work smoothly for us. So I wanted to show you a couple of resources because I do notice we're getting close to time, and I want to make sure Alicia has a chance to talk about one of the programs that we do know about in the county and that we do participate in. Part of this presentation that I have for you today are just some other videos and resources. The last slide in the video has links to everything that we used as we were beginning to research and uncover information around this topic. But many of these videos are really interesting. This one that's on the green TV down here, the Educators Advocating for Broadband, is from the Department of Education. And if you get a chance, it's a little bit longer video, but Cindy Martin, is kind of a local known person who's now working at the Department of Ed, is talking in it. It's a group of a leader from the National Education Association, and they have a very good discussion on it. If you get a chance to watch that one, I highly recommend, out of all of these, looking at the one in the green TV. But if you're wanting to do a little deeper dive for yourself, those videos are available here. Alicia, I'm going to click on your next slide and give you a chance to talk about this program, which is an awesome program.
Okay, so one of the things that SDCOE is doing, and some of you may know of this, but we partner with Computers to SD Kids, and we do events once a month where we provide refurbished computers to families. And these computers are no more than 2 years old. They're usually donated by large companies around the United States. Last year, we were able to service 797 families with 1,288 devices, as well as internet access. Not everybody in that number needed internet, but a lot did. And the computers go for a desktop for $100, and for a laptop, it's $150. So it's a great price. And families are so happy because for many of them, it's the first time that they have ever had a computer at their home that belongs to them. And they're not just limited to one computer. So I know one of the statistics that Pamela brought up was the fact that a lot of people don't have enough computers in their household to service the needs of everyone. And this is a way that families can have more than one computer at a cost that's very affordable. The other really great thing about it is that once you buy the computer, it doesn't matter if anything happens, you can turn it in for a new computer, whether that's next month, next year, or 5 years from now. And so it's essentially having a lifetime of computers, because they will take back any computer if you cannot afford one. So this is a great program. We're having our next event up in San Marcos Elementary School on October, it's the first Saturday of October. I think it's October 5th. But if anybody is interested in that and you have not gotten it from your district, I send it to every district out there. If you have not gotten it, then please contact us and we will make sure that you have a flyer for that. Any questions about that program? Anybody have families who have benefited from the program? Oh, it's October 7th. Thank you, Kathy, for letting me know. October 7th. That's always, and we always make it the first Saturday of every month, just because we know a lot of families do receive a check at the first of the month. So we always have it the first Saturday of every month, and we try to vary the locations throughout San Diego County. So that's our North County one. We had one in Central San Diego. We had one down in Chula Vista, and we'll have East County on November, I think November, whatever the first Saturday in November is. So please be on the lookout for those. They're always on our website as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can go to our website, and if you look at our EdTech events, we have a one pager that lists out all our events for the year as we're planning them, and those links are always in there for the Computers to Kids. I really love the program Alicia was showing you. It does think about those the accessibility. They're getting computers into the hands of kids. They help with the internet access. It's affordable. And the other thing they have thought about really is that adoption piece. So the computers coming fully loaded with software and getting 24-hour full-time technical support. So they thought about the whole package, and they've done their homework in terms of what the needs of students and families are to keep those kinds of programs going. Okay. So my last thoughts for you, and as we wrap up here, are just some of the events that are coming up for EdTech. You can always find these on our website if you're interested in some of our other series. All of them are available to the series, the AR/VR network, I have a poster workshop coming up on September 30th. So let me back up my train here a bit. If you're interested in anything having to do with immersive technologies and you want to learn more, we have quite a few events. They're listed here if you have access. If one of my co-hosts can put the access to the slide deck again into the chat for anyone who might have came in a little bit later, you can register on that link. All of those events are free. There is a AR poster workshop. So imagine these posters that you see here in this picture with an app. We're teaching teachers how to make those posters come to life. So your students will hold up an iPad or a device. It scans the picture and the picture will turn and talk to them. And we're teaching teachers how to create those for themselves so that you can have talking posters in your hallway and your students can do that. If you're interested, please click there. And I know we'll be offering that again from time to time. Jessica, did you want to talk a little bit about the Back to Basics series? Is Jessica still here? She might have had to tap out to get her.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my
here.
mute
Okay.
button. But yes, our Back to Basics series is all about returning to the basics and covering the Google Suite, anything from Google Drive, Docs, Sheets, and perhaps a little more advanced things too, but really revisiting those old foundational skills.
Okay, and then Alicia, did you want to talk about the esports clinic a little bit?
Sure. We as some of you may know, we support esports at the San Diego County Office of Ed, and we are hosting a coaches clinic. So if any of you have people who are interested in starting an esport team or club at your school, send them my way. I'd love to talk to them about it.
And again, you can find out more information on our website. And with that, I just wanted to call your attention to the links that we have here and the fact that we really appreciate your time. And I think we're right at 6 o'clock. So if anyone wants to stay after, I'll hold the room open for the next 15 minutes to have just an open discussion. But otherwise, I wanted to thank you for your time. We really appreciate you coming, and I hope I see you at our next one.